We barely had time to recover from the onslaught of announcements and reveals from last week's slate of summer gaming showcases before Valve kicked off the June 2025 Steam Next Fest. As usual, there are hundreds of demos to try, more than any one person can reasonably tackle in the week-long period that the showcase runs, but we gave it the good college try. After going hands-on with about 60 different demos, we settled on a handful of games that are absolutely worth trying out before Steam Next Fest wraps next Monday, June 16th. Also of note is that, in some cases, the games on our list will continue to have their demos up long after Next Fest is over. First up is Eriksholm, The Stolen Dream, which is an isometric, single-player stealth game with an interesting setting and a pretty compelling mystery at its core. The stealth segments are about what you'd expect from the genre: crouch to not make noise, or break line of sight with patrols, etc. But the story and writing that are on display in the demo seem like they'll do a lot of heavy lifting to keep the game interesting, even if its stealth gameplay can be a little formulaic. It also helps that the game is visually stunning. Even though it's only been 3 years since Mina the Hollower's reveal and crowdfunding campaign, it feels like I've been waiting for Yacht Club's first proper follow-up to Shovel Knight for forever. Coinciding with Mina's appearance at Summer Game Fest 2025, we finally got a playable demo and an official release date, and now it feels like October can't come soon enough. Mina the Hollower reminds me a lot of Shovel Knight in that it's almost a one-to-one mix of two NES classics. Only instead of Shovel Knight's Mega Man meets DuckTales concoction, Mina the Hollower is like what you'd get if you blended Castlevania with The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Easily one of my favorite things I played out of all the demos checked out during Steam Next Fest, Cleared Hot is an obvious love letter to the classic EA Strike series, games like Urban Strike, Jungle Strike, etc., and it absolutely nails the feel of those nostalgic gems while updating the visuals. The demo has a surprising amount of depth to it, too, going well beyond what I initially thought the game would be to include an unexpected narrative component. I'm not the biggest fan of cozy games, per se, but I do enjoy the occasional chill experience, which is what initially drew Easy Delivery Company to my attention. After playing the demo during Steam Next Fest, I can confidently say that I'm fully on board with what this game is doing. Easy Delivery Company really is just a delivery driving simulator with some other gameplay elements sprinkled in, things like activating radio towers, clearing snowdrifts, and the like, but its PS1 visuals and lo-fi vibes fit perfectly with the sleepy mountainside town atmosphere it's cultivating. I had played a previous Death Howl demo back when it was initially made public on Steam, but since then it seems like the game has undergone a good bit of polish to where it's in a state closer to what we'll see at release. As far as deck-building tactics games go, Death Howl is really unique and also very upfront about its Dark Souls influence, which comes through in its esoteric lore and dark, moody atmosphere. Plus, it's also pretty dang hard. I don't want to say that Every Day We Fight was my absolute favorite demo from this Steam Next Fest, but it's pretty close to it. I'm a sucker for a good turn-based tactics game, and Every Day We Fight delivers what you'd expect from a game following in the footsteps of Firaxis' XCOM titles, while also introducing some unbelievably cool ideas, like real-time exploration in between encounters, and the ability to actually aim your weapons in first person when attacking enemies. Throw in a time loop sci-fi story, and I'm sold. There were a few great FPS titles available as part of Steam Next Fest, and a bunch of them just so happen to be FPS roguelikes. One of the better ones I played to fit that bill was Moros Protocol, which features some incredibly cool-looking pixel art visuals and art direction that calls to mind Night Dive Studios' System Shock remake. I'm not fully sold on how the game handles its progression loop and upgrade economy, but what's on offer in the demo is at least enough to indicate that Moros Protocol shows a lot of promise. Another title making its public debut after just being revealed at a showcase last week, in this case the PlayStation State of Play, is Hirogami, and from just the small slice of gameplay on offer in the demo, I'm completely sold on the premise of an origami-themed action-adventure title. The closest touchpoint I can think of for Hirogami is a cross-section between Okami and Super Mario 3D Land, and the different abilities that are on display in just the one level are so unbelievably cool to see in action that I already can't wait to see what else it has in store. Deficit is another game that's been on my radar for quite a while that finally got a demo this week, and it quickly justified that spot it's been taking up on my wish list. Essentially what you would get if you mixed Deus Ex with System Shock, Deficit already has the framework of a great immersive sim inspired by the genre's forebears, and that it was made by just a pair of brothers, including its incredible soundtrack, is all the more impressive. Seeing footage or screenshots of Mycopunk doesn't even come close to doing it justice, which is why it's so imperative that you play its demo ahead of its July release to get on board with its undeniably weird blend of sci-fi co-op FPS. One of the few first-person shooters I played this week that's not a roguelike, Mycopunk is a mission-based game where you deploy into an area, fight some very weird and off-putting enemies, and use one of 4 different characters' ability sets to scoot around an arena while trying to stay alive. It's a ton of fun as a solo player, but it only becomes even better when playing with others in co-op. Considering Devolver Digital rarely misses, I think Mycopunk has the potential to be something special when it launches in just a few weeks. Considering that Heart Machine just released Hyperlight Breaker a couple of months ago, I was surprised to see that its next game, Possessors, was one of the featured titles at the Steam Next Fest. What's far less surprising is that Possessors is a killer take on the Metroidvania genre, with some gorgeous, highly stylized art direction, chunky combat, and satisfying movement abilities that fit right in line with what you'd expect from the minds behind Hyperlight Drifter and Solar Ash. You can tell that Possessors is still in an early state, but what's there is really, really good. The reveal of Dispatch at the Game Awards 2024 immediately piqued my interest in the title, especially after learning that it was from a team made up of former Telltale Games staff. The demo from Steam Next Fest only reinforced that interest. Even though it's a little light on actual gameplay, there was not a single other demo from this week with the writing or characters that intrigued me as much as Dispatch's. Instantly wishlisted. Absolum was revealed earlier this year as the next game from Guard Crush, who co-developed both Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap and Streets of Rage 4, and it's perhaps my most anticipated roguelike now after playing its latest demo. As someone who counts both Guardian Heroes and Dungeons & Dragons Shadows over Mystara as 2 of their favorite beat-em-ups, their influence on Absolum is loud and clear. And coupled with Absolum's gorgeous hand-drawn visuals and a surprising Mike Mignola influence in its art direction, Absolum is a game that looks even better than it plays. We don't get nearly enough 3D Metroidvanias, and Aeromachina is proof positive that it's a template that needs to be explored more often. Bearing some similarities to the excellent Pseudo Regalia, Aeromachina has some excellent combat and ability-gated progression that make each new upgrade feel both earned and essential to exploring more of its interesting world. Plus, you're an anthropomorphic fighter jet. What's not to love? Morbid Metal was a nice surprise that kind of caught me off guard. A very solid cross between a character action game and a roguelike that features some supremely satisfying movement and traversal, coupled with excellent combat, complete with its own Devil May Cry style ranking system. Morbid Metal is actually being published by Ubisoft, and it seems like having that AAA push behind it has also allowed it to be one of the best looking action roguelikes coming down the pike. Out of all the FPS roguelikes I played this week, which, to be honest, was a lot, the best by a country mile was Voidbreaker. Voidbreaker borrows heavily from the momentum-based, push-forward combat model of 2016's Doom, but dresses it up in a slick and futuristic sci-fi aesthetic that deserves to be seen in action. There's also a cool dystopian revenge plot at play against the sadistic AI acting as your handler, and I can't wait to see how more of that unfolds when it eventually releases later this year. As a huge fan of the original Moonlighter, I had very little doubt that I was going to love Moonlighter too. Sure enough, the transition to 3D from the original's 2D pixel art has done little to detract from the addictive gameplay loop of venturing into dungeons for loot and then selling it back to your fellow villagers. Moonlighter 2 does feel like more Moonlighter but 3D, and I'm totally okay with that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're now just a few weeks away from the release of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, and its recent public demo as part of Steam Next Fest only serves to make that wait even harder. The Game Kitchen were absolutely the right team to tackle a new 2D Ninja Gaiden, and it's amazing to see how fast and fluid its combat is after their work on both blasphemous titles. Ultimately, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound feels like what a modern attempt at one of the classic 2D entries should be. It's fast, it's bloody, it's challenging, and it practically begs replaying to meet the skill ceiling of the game's refined mechanics. There are a lot of retro survival horror games coming to Steam over the next 6 to 12 months, and Holstin is arguably the most impressive and promising of them all. When Holstin was initially revealed and got its first public demo, a lot of attention was paid to the camera-shifting combat that alternated between overhead exploration and behind-the-shoulder shooting, but that's far from the only thing the game has going for it. This newest demo goes all in on the game's story, atmosphere, and puzzle-solving elements, doing a great job of showcasing how it straddles the line between old-school survival horror homage and indie survival horror innovation. Now, if only we can get a concrete release date. Maybe my favorite demo that became available just ahead of Steam Next Fest and is likely to stick around until the game's launch in September is the one for Hell Is Us. People have been using the term Souls-like to talk about Hell Is Us, and while I don't necessarily agree that it's a pure Souls-like, I will say that there's definitely some weighty, methodical combat at play that feels like Hell Is Us studied under the tutelage of From Software. Everything else the game has going on, though, is uniquely its own. Playing it for the first time, I realized that its atmosphere and story give off a vibe that's reminiscent of what I thought Death Stranding was going to be before I actually played it, and I'm not quite sure exactly what it is that's grabbing me about Hell Is Us, but I'm absolutely picking up whatever it's putting down. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Take the time to go and check out any of these demos or the hundreds more currently available on Steam. As a reminder, Steam Next Fest runs until June 16th. Some of these games only have a limited window of availability for you to try before they go back in the oven ahead of their eventual release. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ding the notification bell for more content from Cheat Code Central.